I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we continue with Section 624, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. We're starting in Chapter 16, The Snafu Principle. Quote, "The peculiar nature of the game makes it impossible for participants to stop the game once it is underway. Such situations we label games without end." Watzlawick Bevan Jackson, Pragmatics of Human Communication. Communication is only possible between equals. The dominance heteromoral says, "I'm in charge around this habitat." The submissive says, "I'm moral and he's immoral." This is Second Circuit neuropolitics. They shall come to no good. James Joyce, Finnegan's Wake. Mammalian sociobiology, rooted in the antique neural circuits of the old brain, contains many factors opposing the evolution of domesticated primates into true freedom and objective intelligence. The chief of these reactionary factors was described in my novel Illuminatus as the Snafu Principle, or Salene's Law. It holds that communication is only possible between equals. This was an oversimplification for fictional satirical purposes. More precisely, this proposed law would read, adequate communication flows freely between equals. Communication between non-equals is warped and distorted by Second Circuit domination and submission rituals, perpetuating communication jam in a game without end. Political power, as a typical alpha male once said, grows out of the barrel of a gun. This is metaphorically as well as literally true. The gun may be symbolic and fairly abstract, consisting of ritualized social expectations. Don't talk back to your father. Or concrete in a nonviolent but deadly way, e.g., the capacity to remove biosurvival necessities by cutting off the ticket supply in a capitalist society. "One more word and I'll fire you," Bump said. Under the primate Second Circuit socio-biological rules, everybody tends to lie a little, to flatter or to evade displeasure, when exchanging signals with those above them in the pack hierarchy. Every authoritarian structure can be visualized as a pyramid with an eye on the top. This is the typical flowchart of any government, any corporation, any army, any bureaucracy, any mammalian pack. On each rung, participants bear a burden of omniscience in relation to those above them. That is, they must be very, very careful that the natural sensory activities of being conscious organisms, the acts of seeing, hearing, smelling, drawing inferences from perception, etc., are in accord with the reality tunnel of those above them. This is absolutely vital. Pack status and job security depends on it. It's much less important, a luxury that can be easily discarded, that these perceptions be in accord with objective fact. For instance, in the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover, the agent had to develop a capacity to see godless communists everywhere. Any agent whose perceptions indicated that there were actually very few godless communists in this country at that time would experience cognitive dissonance. His or her reality tunnel was at variance with the official reality tunnel of the pyramid. To talk about such perceptions at all would be to invite suspicions of eccentricity, intellectual wisecracking, or of being oneself a godless communist. The same would apply to a Dominican inquisitor in the Middle Ages who lacked the capacity to see witches everywhere. In such authoritarian situations, it's important to see what the top dogs, male alphas, see. It's convenient and possibly dangerous to see what is objectively happening. But this leads to an equal and opposite burden of omniscience upon those at the top, in the eye of the pyramid. All that is forbidden to those at the bottom, the conscious activities of perception and evaluation, is demanded of the power elite, the master class. They must attempt to do the seeing, hearing, smelling, etc., and all the thinking and evaluating for the whole pyramid. But a man with a gun, the power to punish, is told only when the target thinks will not cause him to pull the trigger. Write the pink slip, order the court-martial. The elite, with their burden of omniscience, face the underlings with their burden of nescience, and receive only the feedback consistent with their own preconceived notions and reality tunnels. The burden of omniscience becomes over time another and more complex burden of nescience. Nobody really knows anything anymore, or if they do, they are careful to hide the fact. The burden of nescience becomes omnipresent. More and more of sensory experience becomes unspeakable. As Paul Watzlawick notes, that which is objectively repressed, unspeakable, soon becomes subjectively repressed, unthinkable. Nobody likes to feel like a coward and a liar constantly. It's easier to cease to notice where the official title reality differs from existential fact. Thus, snafu accelerates and a rigidus bureaucraticus sets in, the last stage before all brain activity ceases and the pyramid is clinically dead as an intellectual entity. We also propose that national security is another semantic spook, as Empeclodean knot, that the search for national security is the chief cause of national insecurity and a potent anti-intelligence mechanism. As Leary writes, secrecy is the original sin, fig leaf in the Garden of Eden. The basic crime against love, the purpose of life, is to receive, synthesize, and transmit energy. Communication fusion is the goal of life. Any star can tell you that. Communication is love. Secrecy, withholding the signal, hoarding, hiding, covering up the light, is motivated by shame and fear. As so often happens, the right wing is half right for the wrong reasons. They say primly, if you have done nothing wrong, you have no fear of being bugged. Exactly. But the logic goes both ways. Then FBI files, CIA dossiers, White House conversations should be open to all. Let everything hang open. Let government be totally visible. The very last people to hide their actions should be the police and the government. What my eminent colleague states so poetically can be stated more functionally as follows. Every secret police agency must be monitored by an elite corps of secret police of the second order. This is because A, infiltration of the secret police, for purposes of subversion, will always be a prime goal of both internal subversive and hostile foreign powers, and B, secret police agencies acquire fantastic capacities to blackmail and intimidate others, in and out of government. Stalin executed 3 chiefs of the secret police in a row because of this danger. As Nixon so wistfully said in the Watergate transcript, well, Hoover performed. He would have fought. That was the point. He would have defied a few people. He would have scared them to death. He had a file on everybody. Thus, those who employ secret police agencies must monitor them, to be sure they are not acquiring too much power. Here a sinister infinite regress enters the game. Any elite second-order police must be also subject to infiltration, or to acquiring too much power, in the opinion of its masters. And so it, too, must be monitored by a secret police of the third order. In brief, once a government has N orders of secret police spying on each other, all are potentially suspect, and to be safe, a secret police of order N+1 must be created, and so on, forever. In practice, of course, this cannot regress to mathematical infinity, but only to the point where every citizen is spying on every other citizen, or until the funding runs out. National security, in practice, must always fall short of the logically Empedoclean infinite regress it requires for perfect security. In that gap between the ideal of one nation under surveillance, with wiretaps and urine tests for all, and the strictly limited real situation of finite resources and finite funding, there's ample encouragement for paranoias of all sorts to flourish, both among the citizens and among the police. Thus, the USSR, after 62 years of Marxist secret police games, reached the point where alpha males were terrified of painters and poets. In spying and hiding transactions, worry leads to more worry, and suspicion leads to more suspicion. The very act of participating, however unwillingly, in the secret police game, even as a victim or a citizen being monitored, will eventually produce all the classic symptoms of clinical paranoia. The agent knows who he is spying on, but he never knows who is spying on him. Could it be his wife, his mistress, his secretary, the newsboy, the good humor man? If there's a secret police at all in any nation, every branch and department of government and institutions which are not even admitted to be parts of government become suspect in the eyes of cautious and intelligent people as a possible front for or funnel to the secret police. That is, the more shrewd will recognize that something bearing the label HEW, or even International Silicon and Pencil, might actually be the CIA or NSA in disguise. In such a deception network, conspiracy theories proliferate, rumors necessary. It has been found when people cannot find official news sources that can be trusted to tell them what is really going on. The present author, having worked in the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the legalized pot movement, and other dissident causes, has repeatedly been approached by friend A with dire warnings that friend B is almost certainly a secret police agent, only to be told later and independently by friend C that friend A is a secret police agent. It requires delicate neurological know-how to keep one's sense of humor in the secret police matrix. The more omnipresent the secret police, the more likely it is that intelligent men and women will regard the government with fear and loathing. The government, on discovering that growing numbers of citizens regard it with fear and loathing, will increase the size and powers of secret police to protect itself. The infinite regress again appears. Thus concludes section 624 of Prometheus Rising, Robert Anton Wilson. We're going to pick up tomorrow in section 625, chapter 16, the snafu principle. I will see you then. Alam.